mute. And I want to announce also that today's class is being sponsored by Miri and Esther Ansel in memory of their father, Zalman Ben Tzvi, on his second yortzeit. And he should have, his neshama should have a true aliyah. I knew Zalman from when I was a teenager, when they first came to Colorado, because his last name was Ansel, A-N-C-E-L. Of course, everyone, we thought maybe he was related to us because my maiden name was A-N-C-E-L-L. And Zalman and my father tried to find some sort of connection. They never found an official connection, but they always felt like there was a connection. So I just want to share that it should be an aliyah for his neshama, and your family should have comfort, Miriam, from him, and the learning that we all do today, and anything beneficial that comes from it should all be credited to each of us individually as well as to your father's neshama. So thank you. All right, this week we are in parsha Ki-Tetze, and parsha Ki-Tetze in the book of Devarim. We're actually going to talk about, Miriam, will you tell your mom, she's just getting ready to join in, will you tell her that I announced it? I want her to think that I forgot. Okay. The part we're going to talk about in Devarim here in parsha Ki-Tetze, we always read parsha Ki-Tetze during the month of Elul, and we know that everything that we are doing during the month of Elul is always related to the fact that it's the month of Elul, even though Elul is not mentioned in the parsha. However, the very end of the parsha, we are also familiar with. If you want to turn to page 1067. Oh, before we do that, I'm sorry, let's say our bracha. Sorry, I forgot about that. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol hamim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. On page 1067, the end of parsha Ki-Tetze, which is also chapter 25, verses 17 through 19, you will look at it, you'll see it might ring a bell when you go to the Hebrew, that the first word of that verse 17 is remember. And the word in Hebrew is zachor. And it is zachor, parshat Zachor, which is read before Purim, because this is to remember. What does it say? Remember what Amalek did to you on the way when you were leaving Egypt, that he happened upon you on the way, and he struck those of you who were hindmost, all the weaklings that you rear when you were faint and exhausted, and he did not fear God, etc., etc. What are we looking at here? We're talking about the attack of Amalek on the Jewish people when they left Egypt, but the description here is always jumped on. Our sages always jump on where it says that he happened upon you. In the Hebrew, it says asher karcha. Asher karcha, that he happened upon you. But if you know the word karcha, the root there, kar, is also understood to mean cold. Kar means cold. And it says that he colded you. And I know it's like a big thing everyone's talking about, like being chill. Like that's like a very cool thing to say. Oh, it was very chill. Well, in the case of Amalek, the chilling was not a good thing. The chill was on the chilling the enthusiasm of the Jewish people who had expressed doubt about whether Hashem was with them or not after leaving Egypt. And it says that Amalek came and asher karcha baderech, came and chilled you out and lessened your enthusiasm. Usually we talk about this idea in the context of chilling our relationship with Hashem, that we are somehow, we just feel a sense of doubt, we feel a sense of disconnection, because Amalek, which is the name of the people who attacked us, the gematria, the numerical equivalent of Amalek, is the same as the word for doubt. The word for doubt is safek, samech fe kuf, and the gematria of that is equal to 240. 240 is Amalek, 240 is safek, which means doubt, and it also is the same letters, only rearranged, form the word pasak. The word pasak means stopped, like it's related to the word like in rabbinic terms, a psak halacha. Why is it called a psak halacha? It's a legal ruling. It's like the final word. It's like it ends. A word in Hebrew, when somebody has a recess, is called a hafsaka. So it's related to the same thing, as is the word pasuk, that where you have sof pasuk, the end of a sentence. So all of those have to do with the idea of something ending and stopping. It's where the period is, where it stops. So we see it not a trickle effect, a cascading effect, that when Amalek, then we're going to generalize this now, this Amalek energy is about doubting and it's about stopping. Now, when we talk about it traditionally, we're talking about it usually in our relationship with Hashem. What we're going to do today is going to be to revisit a class, and I'm pretty sure that we did this together, but it was in 2018. So it's been 5 years, and maybe it's not fresh in your minds. It wasn't fresh in my mind, and I think it bears repeating at this time of year. So that's what we're going to focus on, is this idea of doubting and stopping and the Amalek energy when it comes to ourselves, specifically in the context of, we talk about this time of year of Elul, of doing teshuvah, of making a plan for how we're going to have a better year, how we are going to change. And we may have a very clear idea of what we want to change. But then the question has to come up, how is the change going to happen? What allows change to happen? What facilitates change to happen? Because the truth is that we are wired not to change. If we can understand, and I'm not a psychologist and I don't even play one on TV, but we're going to talk about some of these ideas and I don't fully grasp them, but our minds have different parts to them that have different functions. So there is a part of the brain, there is a part of the mind that has ideas, that has an innovation, or I want to do something. The part of your mind that can say, I would like to learn how to play the piano. There's that part of the mind that can be activated. And then there's another part of the mind that says, what makes you think you can learn how to play the piano? You don't even know how to sing on key. You don't even know what a musical note looks like. You're too old, you're too whatever. It's like, no, don't do that, because you shouldn't change. The goal of that part of the brain is like, let's just keep everything the status quo and keep you safe emotionally, physically. Let's just not do anything crazy here. You could say it's your overprotective mother that is living in your head that doesn't want you to do any of those things. So it's like, so how then is a person supposed to change? How are you supposed to act on this inner wisdom that says, I would like to lose weight, exercise, start davening, go to shul, not speak lashon hara, any of these things? How is that supposed to happen if at the same time there is this other piece that's going to be like, no, we're not having any of those changes. We're not doing that. So how do we do that? So there is a wonderful book. It's not a Jewish book. It's called The 5-Second Rule. The 5-Second Rule, and it is by Mel Robbins. I'm going to hold it up here. The 5-Second Rule by Mel Robbins. I have to say, some of her language in here, the language of people she quotes, is not entirely what I would highly recommend, because she just quotes people without any editing. But the wisdom of it is incredible. Now, when I say the 5-second rule, I don't know about you, but the first time I heard when I referred to the 5-second rule, what do you think about it? It's like, it's how long, yes, Carol, what you just pantomime. It's how long you have to eat food that dropped on the floor before you can really consider that it got ruined. Okay, it's like 5-second rule, you can still eat it. Because I'm like, nobody ever said, well, what, 3-second rule. Okay, so when do you have a 3-second rule? We're very permissive here. We have a 5-second rule. So 5-second rule is like, it's the amount of time where there's something that doesn't happen or something does happen. This 5-second rule that Mel Robbins came up with came to her when she was going through a period of time that was very challenging in her life. She was having emotional difficulties, financial difficulties, marital difficulties, everything, and she couldn't even get out of bed. The kids were late to school, their permission slips weren't signed, the lunches weren't packed, the clothes were out, the creditors were knocking, everything was falling apart. And after saying every single day, tomorrow I'm going to get up on time. Tomorrow I'm going to do whatever. First of all, that word tomorrow is always associated with Amalek as well, is tomorrow. Because tomorrow is the strategy of the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination for people who are righteous. Righteous people, the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, is not trying to get you to do something wrong. It's trying to get you to not do anything. It's trying to get you to just say tomorrow. If I can get you to say tomorrow, then your self-respect is intact, and I don't have to worry about you doing whatever the good thing is or acting on your impulse to do something that is the right thing. I don't have to worry about it because I can get you to say tomorrow. So Amalek is connected with tomorrow. Where do we see that? Which is very strange. We're going to go back to the place where Amalek is first mentioned, which is back in parsha Shemot. Not parsha Shemot. In parsha Bishalach, in the book of Shemot, the book of Exodus. If you go back to page 391, which is chapter 17, verse 8, page 391, parsha Bishalach. Hold on one second, I just need to admit somebody. I'm sorry. Oh, she just went away. Sorry. Okay. It says, Amalek came and battled Israel in Rephidim. Moshe said to Joshua, choose people for us and go do battle with Amalek. Tomorrow, I will stand on top of the hill with the staff of God in my hand. It's like, when somebody attacks you, is that a strategy that you say, tomorrow? Tomorrow we'll have the fight. It's like, no, they're attacking you, so go now. Says the word tomorrow, that was the problem. The problem is Amalek represents the power of saying, tomorrow I'm going to start. I'm going to start on September 1st. I'm going to start right after Rosh Hashanah. I'm going to start on Monday. I'm going to start after this. I'm going to start. Anything that gets us to push off and not act. It can even be, I'll start after lunch. I'll start, but anything other than now. Says as soon as that hesitation goes in, our brain becomes stressed. It says, if you're hesitating, there must be a reason why you shouldn't do it. And then your mind starts coming up with rationalizations and excuses of why now is not a good time. And this has been spoken about, speaking of Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, from Mesilas Yesharim, the path of the just. And the path of the just, if for any of you who have the book, in chapter 9, verses 20 through 28, I'm sorry, that's it says, Shlomo said 7 things regarding the lazy man. To illustrate, they said to the lazy man, your teacher is in the city. Go and learn Torah from him. He replies, I'm afraid of the lion on the road. This is from Mishlei. So your teacher is in the neighborhood. He replies, I'm afraid he might be between the paths. He's like going to be in between 2 streets. I won't be able to find him. Says, he's in your building. He replies, if I go to him, I might find that the door is locked. Says, he replies, we learn from here that it is not the fear that causes him to be lazy, but rather the opposite. The laziness causes the fear. That as soon as we don't act on the impulse, and this is not talking about being reckless or hasty. This is about talking about not letting something intercept or interrupt our good motivations, and specifically taking some sort of action, no matter how small. So it turns out from scientific research that you have an amount of time to act when we have an idea, and before with the hesitating will keep us from acting on it. And that amount of time is 5 seconds. You have 5 seconds. The brain starts working in a nanosecond. As soon as it senses a hesitation, it comes up starts thinking. But you have 5 seconds to act. And the acting has to be an action. It cannot be a thought. The problem is, and we're a cerebral people, we're an intellectual people, we're a thinking people. There are times though when thinking actually becomes our enemy, where thinking and overthinking and overanalyzing becomes an impediment. And we have to get past that part of our mind. The other thing that gets in our way are our feelings. Because when there is something that we should be doing and we don't do it, we often say, because I don't feel like it. I don't really feel like going to the gym. I don't feel like whatever. I don't feel like it. I'm not up to it. I don't feel like it. It says feelings and overthinking are what get in our way. And the antidote to it is action. It says when we are actually acting and doing something, it intercepts and interrupts those two pathways. So we know that when somebody is very angry, that sometimes they'll be told, count to 10, count to 10. So I always thought it was just like, just pause for 10, like just count to 10. This is, what does counting do? Counting is a different part of the brain than feeling angry. I guess you could say 1, 2, 3. I mean, you could count like that and try to be angry and count at the same time. But basically, the counting part of the brain is different than the emotional part of the brain. So by switching to counting, we're going onto a different channel. And during that period of time, then one can calm down, but it's because one is using a different part of the brain. I feel like we really should, we study about the neshama, we study about free will and the Yetzer Hara. I feel like we should be well-versed in, I don't know, cognitive, behavioral, whatever it is, some sort of knowledge about how the brain works and how the mind works to be able to understand what gets in our way and what can help us. So it turns out that this 5-second rule, how does it work? So what happened with Mel Robbins is she was in bed, not functioning. This tomorrow I'm going to get up. And it happened to be during a rocket launch. And for whatever NASA was doing something, launching a rocket somewhere, and they were counting. And all of us know this. If you hear 5, so it's not counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It has to be 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then in our minds, even if you don't say it, you're thinking one thing, blast off. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, blast off. And so she saw this on TV and she said, that's it. Tomorrow, I'm going to 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, blast out of bed. The next morning, she said, she's been having years of difficulty. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And she said, and I said, stand up. And she goes, and I stood up. Now you might think like, well, this is not anything to write home about. Oh, great, you stood up out of bed. This is actually where the change happens, is that there are these little teeny tiny points throughout our day that don't appear major, but they are where the change happens when we go one direction or another. If we are habituated to one direction, we will just keep going in that direction, no matter how much we have thought about going in a different direction. It is not until we actually step and do something into this other direction with an action that the change can happen. The 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 is called a starting ritual. Because in our minds, once you hit 0, if you count 1, 2, 3, I'm going to get up, I'll count to 5, and then I'm going to get up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, if you're like me, you'd be 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, I'll go to 20, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And then pretty soon you're at like 120. Okay, I'll just make it an even 200. Next thing you know, you're sound asleep again. So that's what happens when you count up. When you count down and you end up and there's no place else to go, and you say a word like get up, put on my shoes, put down the ice cream, whatever it might be, whatever it is, an action, the counting prepares us to act. It distracts us from our feelings. It focuses our mind that we're about to take action, and it interrupts all of the excuses and the chatter that's going on in our heads. I find this fascinating. I have to say a lot of our Aliyah preparation was based on 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, make the call. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, look for the information, whatever it was, because it was so many tasks. So we think that change is about, I'm going to change. It's like, first you need to get out of bed, or put on your shoes, or put down the ice cream, or close your mouth. Like any of those things, like first there has to be doing something. The interesting thing is counting is considered a semi-action, okay? Thinking is not an action. Thinking is not an action. But counting, verbalizing out loud, is actually considered an action, and it is a ritual to help act. So in this book, she's talking about people whose lives have been changed, like millions of people whose lives are changed 1 5-second rule at a time, invoking that on anything and everything in their life where they are facing, and they know it, because once you start paying attention to it, you start to see it everywhere. You start to see how many times during the day that happens. And it's not, you don't have to have a plan. It's just like, just do something. Just do something, do anything, and act. So what does this require? So we hear the term zerizut. Zerizut, which it means alacrity, is not about acting quickly as much as it is about acting with focus and determination, and not allowing interruption. It's not being interrupted and stopped with doubts and second guessing and all of these things that get in our way. So it says in the Shulchan Aruch, the Code of Jewish Law, the very first thing in the Code of Jewish Law, what's the first law? Before you're going to do anything, it says one should strengthen himself like a lion to get up in the morning to serve his creator, so that it is he who awakens the dawn. I'm not exactly there yet. But to strengthen yourself like a lion, it doesn't say to strengthen yourself like a lion to go out and save the world. It says strengthen yourself like a lion to get up out of bed. It's like, seriously? I have to be like a lion to get out of bed? It's like, yep, just get up. So this is, and now you may be somebody who already gets up and you don't have any trouble with that. But if we're human beings, there's something in our path that is getting bogged down. It could be a spiritual goal, a physical goal, an emotional goal, whatever it is, these blockages are coming to us. And we know that the things that where we're operating well are things where we have like a well-oiled machine. Like I'm hoping that in the evening, you don't stand in front of your mirror in your bathroom. You're like, should I brush my teeth or shouldn't I brush my teeth? It's like you take out your toothbrush, you pick up the toothpaste, and you just do it, because you're not thinking about it. It's like, I don't really feel like it. That's what kids do, hopefully, right? But it's like, that's because it's already a habit. And we're not thinking about how we feel about it. So the word for feeling, like emotion, is regesh. Okay, regesh is feeling. Okay, so regesh is what gets in our way. Okay, feelings are fine, but not when we're trying to think about how we feel. Can you imagine? I mean, God forbid, I hope none of you had this. If your parents said to you in the morning, I just don't really feel like taking care of you today. I don't feel like it. It's like, that's why we actually have like a wedding contract. It's not like I don't feel like it today. It's like, we can't operate that way. If all of us, and I think much of the world is operating this way, it's like, I don't feel like it. I feel like this, I feel like that. It's like, feelings are great, but they have a certain place, and trying to make progress is not a place where feelings should enter in. They have to take a back seat. So now the word feeling is regesh, resh, gimel, shin. Okay, resh, gimel, shin. The counter to that is to operate within these 5 seconds. And the word that is used, which is really interesting. Hold on, let me share this with you. Is, hold on, let me take off the paper clip. That would make things much easier. Also in the Silat Yesharim, it says, chapter 7, section 3, it says, rather, when the time of its performance comes, when it's something that you should be doing comes, or when it happens to present itself to him, or when the thought of performing it enters his mind, he meaning general people, He should hurry and hasten to seize hold of it and perform it, and not allow time to go by in between. For there is no danger like its danger, since behold, each new second that arises can bring within it a new impediment to the good deed. The word that is used for the second that arises, for each second that arises, the amount of time, is the word rega. Rega is Resh Gimel Ayin. Now, for those of you who know Hebrew, Resh, first of all, the first two letters of Regesh and Rega are the same. They're both Resh and Gimel. The Ayin for Rega looks like a shin minus one stick. Okay, the shin has 3 sticks, and the Rega, the Ayin, has 2. So it's almost like you knocked off one stick of the feeling to get to that moment, that second that has to be grabbed. And like you say, there's no danger greater. It's like, seriously? Why is there no danger greater than that, than waiting? It says, because you will fail to live up to your potential in big and small ways. You will never be able to make the changes you want to make unless we get a hold of this. But before, it's always been, need to change, you need to be able to change, you need to be able to act. It's like, how? Because clearly, if I knew how, I would have already been doing it, right? It's kind of like, you need to do something differently, but what? So this tool of this 5-second rule is a tool. So this was all in what's her name again? Forget. Mel Robbins. This was all in her book. Was this obviously not the information? Though I really want to have a conversation with her to talk about Mesilat Yesharim and see if she'd like to rewrite the Jewish version of this and kind of edit it a little bit. But I thought that what would be really interesting is, like, if this is true, and this is true as far as how the brain works, if it's true, there must be some additional Torah to support it. So you all know that I am a big fan of gematria, that math describes reality, and we should be able to find something that supports the idea of these 5 seconds being something where we can counter the impact of Amalek, where we can counter the impact of stopping, counter the impact of doubting, counting the impact of just letting go and letting the Yetzer Hara come against us. Like, what is the counter to Amalek, which is, this isn't me. Amalek symbolizes the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, that which is acting as an opposing force to us. And again, the opposing force for people who are good people is, I just need to stop you from doing good things. And that way I'll be good. You will not progress. So I took the gematria of the word rega, which is a second. And rega equals 273. Resh is 200, Gimel is 3, and Ayin is 70. And I thought, okay, 273. If you have 5 seconds to act, so then let's figure out what's 5 times 273. What's that? What does that equal? So it says you have 1,365 something. That's what rega is equal to, times 5. Rega times 5 equals 1365. I plugged that into my gematria search engine thing. Like, what in Tanakh, is there anything in Tanakh that equals 1,365? Is there a verse? I knew there wouldn't be a word because that's too big of a word. There's no Hebrew word that equals 1,365, but maybe there's a verse that equals that would be interesting and would be informative. And wouldn't you know, the verse that comes up is from Exodus chapter 17, verse 16. He said, for the hand Amalek is upon the throne of the Lord will be at war with Amalek throughout the ages. So it is that verse of chapter 17, verse 16 equals 1,365. That's the gematria of that verse. It says, well, how amazing is that the 5 seconds equals the verse telling us exactly Amalek is going to be, God is at war with Amalek, meaning that we are at war with this force throughout the ages. This is not something like, oh, humanity has advanced and now nobody deals with this as a problem. It's like Every single person in every single generation in all times is dealing with this challenge. It'll look different for different people of where it's showing up, but this is it. The antidote to Amalek are these 5 seconds, these 5 regas that move us from regesh, that move us from feeling, I don't feel like it, to rega of the counting this time to put myself in a different place and to start moving. And when we can do that, so then we will be able to make the changes. The last verse on page 392, hold on a second. It's verse 16. Yes, and he said, it's the last verse, it's on page, in Hebrew, page 392, and English, the 393. And he said, for the hand is on the throne of God. Hashem maintains a war against Amalek from generation to generation. Those are marching orders for us, because the battle against Amalek, and then we say in this week's parsha, Zachor, remember what Amalek did to you. Remember what this force does to you. Asher karcha baderech, that comes to chill you on your way. On your way where? So the way we're understanding this is on our way to transformation, on our way leaving. We are leaving Egypt. I want to leave Egypt. And Asher karcha baderech, and my enthusiasm, I want to leave whatever the bad habit is, whatever the thing is that I want to change. I want to leave. But then what happens? I get chilled out by Amalek. Asher karcha baderech b'tzeitchem b'Mitzrayim. You were in the process of leaving and you stopped. So this stopping is like, how many people stop? And the stopping can be something, it can be fear of failure. It can be fear of success. It could be a sense of boredom. It can be overwhelmed. It can be self-doubt. It can be, what will people say? It can take any kind of disguise you want. And there's one huge problem with whatever form it takes. It always uses your voice. So it reminds me like of a Star Trek episode, where there's some whatever thing that comes and inhabits the body of whatever, but you don't know that there's an alien inside of you because it sounds just like you. If there really was this alien whatever that was trying to tell you to do the wrong thing or not do the right thing, we might actually say, no, I am going to do it. But when it sounds like us, we start to think that it is us. Instead of thinking, oh, that's just my mind. Some people call it the monkey mind. It's like, that's my mind. That's my Amalek voice that is telling me just like not to move and not to do it. But where's the voice of my neshama? My neshama voice is my voice of wisdom that wants me to act and wants me to go up. So neshama is from the word neshima. It means breath. And it says breath is always going up, always looking to be elevated. That's if the neshama had its way, we'd be making a beeline for, I won't say perfection because that's not possible. We would be making a beeline for constant improvement and being perfecting ourselves. But we have a challenge, which is that we live in a body. And the body, it says the first human being was called Adam, from the word Adama, and that means ground, dirt. So we've got this force in us that is the dirt that prefers to stay on the couch and be a couch potato and not move and be comfortable. And then we have our neshama that's looking to go up. So we already have a mixed marriage here. We have a mixed marriage of the human being that has this ethereal neshama that's looking for elevation, connection to Hashem, complete transformation. And then the other body is like, talk to me about it tomorrow. I want a bag of chips. So it's like, well, how are those things supposed to work together when we know in our minds that there are strategies for intercepting the thoughts that are using our voice and are tricking us by using our voices? Now, in some cases, and you can talk to a good therapist about this, the voice might be the voice of your parent. It might be the voice of a teacher. It might be the voice of a former manager. It could be the voice of anybody who acted as an impediment to your self-growth and to your self-fulfillment. And we've talked about this before. Rabbi Pesach Krohn a profound, prolific author and speaker, was told by one of his important teachers when he was a kid, you'll never be a writer. And if you did write something, no one would ever want to read what you wrote. Now, that is, and he remembered, I mean, he's an elderly man. He remembers that forever. And when he published his first book, he made an appointment to go visit that teacher and show it to her. So I just want to show you this. And other great people have talked about, have talked about what people have said to deter them in their efforts, in their worthwhile goals. Now, you can have a big worthwhile goal, and we have small worthwhile goals that come with us and just day to day. And how do they come to us? They come to us rega by rega, just moment by moment decisions throughout the day where we have to decide to act or not act instead of acting, to change course. And you've got 5 seconds. 5 seconds. So how to channel that, and that we have it in this week's parsha of Mi-Tzion, and it says, Zachor, remember. Whenever we have the word remember, it also means not just to think about it, but to do something about it. When we say Zecher L'Tziat Mitzrayim, the remembrance for the Exodus from Egypt, that's why we make, for Shabbos or Yontif, we make Kiddush, we drink something. You have to say something and do something. Or just like, again, thank you again to Esther and to Miri, to do something in memory of somebody. When we do something in memory of somebody, it's not like, oh, I thought about you. It's like, that's nice, but thinking doesn't make anything happen. There has to be a speaking and a doing. Speaking and a do something. And that's called a zecher. So the word for in Hebrew, the word for like a souvenir is something like an actual thing that you have to have a memory of it. It's not just that like you keep it in your head. There has to be something that is actually activated. So we saw this a lot on women's trips to Israel. People would come back very inspired and with all sorts of promises of things that they were going to do and whatever. And within a week, most of them gone. I remember Rabbi Liban mentioning somebody that said they were going to do something, and he said that was like 15 years ago, and he's still waiting, except he's not really waiting, because it's like inspiration is great, but here's the catch. That beautiful ethereal neshama that means breath has to be grounded with a body that can actually do something. It's not enough actually to be elevated and lofty if you're in this world. If you are in the next world, then yes, you can be that. But if you're in this world, and we are in this world, then we are dependent on the very body that doesn't want to do anything is our ally in doing the things that need to be done in order to elevate us. It's like, well, that's a funny pair. It's like you're hiring an employee who doesn't want to work. But if you could get them to work, they would actually be your biggest asset. So that is the marriage of body and soul. Beth Ann, you want to unmute?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. I never know by me. I just wanted to add one thing is that our bodies were made of the dirt from the Holy Temple. So even at that level, there is something extremely holy about being a person.
But absolutely.
I wanted to ask you a question though, because my Yetzer Hara, it always feels like it's telling me the truth. And
that's very good, Beth Ann. Thank you. Yes, it is definitely telling you the truth. Not okay. So yes, that's the thing, is it's very credible. It's very convincing. It's very persuasive, and it's very wrong. So it is like, it's like, remember we would tell our kids or whoever, like, don't, say no to drugs or whatever, you would prepare people like how to answer back. It's like, what about answering back to ourselves? Because we have to enter this thing. It says, so this is the trick. It says, don't talk to it, act. Don't even get into an argument. It's like somebody says, like, don't even have the discussion, but you'll lose the conversation. you will lose the argument. If you get into a conversation, you'll lose because it's going to come up with this, and other whatever. So just say, thank you very much. And
got it.
I'm going to respond also to something else you said, Beth Ann, about the body. But first, just more about this of ignoring it. It says, this is one of the reasons why we talk about choosing to do very small things, to take an itsy bitsy little thing, to keep it under the radar screen of the Yetzer Hara, kind of like, nothing's happening here. Nothing's happening here. Nothing to see here, folks. Just keep on moving. So it's not Pesach, but this is what I do to myself. I've shared this before. Pesach cleaning is overwhelming, but I have an acronym. It's called PUTTER. It's called Pick Up the Rag. And I say, I'm not cleaning for Pesach. Reverse psychology. I'm not cleaning for Pesach. I just pick up the rag and the 409, but I'm not cleaning. And I'm like, you cannot, once you have that rag and 409 in your hand, you cannot not clean something because you're like, I already did something. I had a starting ritual and I started something. So my eye, first thing always goes to the light switch because that's usually where like the most visible shmutz. And then it's like, oh my gosh, there's fingerprints on the wall. And oh my gosh, the baseboard, there's like all that schmutz and there's dust bunnies. It's like, so you have to have a strategy because you can't have a conversation. It's like arguing like with a 2-year-old. You don't go in there because it's about feelings and it's not ever going to be correct, but it's very persuasive. So remember when we were growing up, there was that show To Tell the Truth, and it would be like, I'm Ellyn Hutt. No, I'm Ellyn Hutt. No, I'm Ellyn Hutt. And they would talk about each one would try to say like why they are, and then the audience would, whoever, or the contestants would decide who is the real one. Well, obviously there's only one person was telling the truth and the other people were convincing. In fact, often the person who was really the person was not convincing at all. It's like, you don't even sound like you. I don't even believe you and you're the person. So it says, don't have the conversation. No conversation. And just start acting and get off that whole channel. When you talk about the body, you raise a very important part. Our bodies are holy. Yes, they are made of the earth and they are earthly and they come from under the Kisei HaKavod, from the throne of glory. And Hashem has given us a body in order to act in this world, because a neshama without a body, that's why we do something in memory of someone as an aliyah for their neshama, because once they're no longer in this world, they have no way of being elevated except through us, because they're without a body. The body is required in order to exist in this world and to be elevated. The challenge is it's more like a wild horse. So we just have to make sure who's the horse and who's the rider. It says the neshama needs to be the rider, but a well-trained horse that has a good rider is going to win the race. That little jockey, if he was running around the track, he's coming in last for sure. But on the horse, he can win. So it's the very horse that had to be trained in order to even have a saddle on it to go around the track. That's what our bodies are compared to. Our bodies, in fact, are understood to be completely corresponding to our neshamas. We talk about the 248 limbs, the 365 organs, and everything that is coordinated goes to the 613 commandments. Our bodies were designed to facilitate our performance of the mitzvot so that we can completely self-actualize. The body is a very powerful tool, but it's a tool that has minds of its own. And so we have to be able to train it, and we have to know how to work with it, and we have to know who we're dealing with. And so we don't want the horse to be like the horse I always got whenever our family went horseback riding. I always got Gladys, and Gladys never really wanted to move forward. Gladys wanted to go off the path and go chew grass. And then whoever was leading it would always say, well, you don't really know how to control the horse. I'm like, oh, that's clear. So everybody else would be like going on the ride, and I'd be with Gladys like off, usually smash my leg next to a tree. Okay, so that didn't work so well. It says, but that's an untrained horse. It's like, I don't feel like going on this walk. So our body's like, I don't feel like it. But there's a part of our mind that Hashem has also given us gives us inspiration, that gives us bursts of enthusiasm, that gives us a desire to be motivated and to go. He says, but you don't have to wait to be motivated in order to act. We just keep thinking it's like, when I feel like it, when it's meaningful to me, when I'm motivated, I'll do it. It's like 9 times out of 10, when it comes time to do it, you won't feel motivated. You will not feel motivated. And the answer is to do something anyway. I think this may be one of the important things. I mean, our family was never a sports family, but I think, that anything that a child is trained to do when they don't feel like doing it is a huge gift, because then they know you can do something even if you don't feel like it. You can do something even if you're nervous. When I taught bar and bat mitzvah students, the students always say, I get nervous. I said, there's an amazing thing. You can sing while you're nervous. Even if your knees are shaking, you still can sing. It's amazing. So you don't even worry about being nervous. It's like kind of irrelevant. It is irrelevant. So when we get to that point, yes, Darlene, I saw your hand before. Please go ahead.
No, I apologize. I didn't mean to cut in.
No.
Finish your thought.
Yeah, no.
I was just thinking, I heard a share today. I'm also in Israel. That's why it was today, this morning. And it was about, like it's a hard telling you things that you can't do, sort of similar to what you were talking about, Beth. And one nice analogy I heard was, like, I'm not very savvy on the computer at all. And I'll mess up and I'll be trying to do something and it'll just mess everything up. And I go to my husband and go, what do I do? And he goes, turn everything off, turn it off. And you're going to have to start from the beginning and reboot and just kind of clean things up. And he goes, we can all reboot. We can turn off our computer. The month of Ellul is a great time to go. We have an opportunity that Hashem is letting us reboot. And that didn't mean anything to me until I started messing up on the computer. But I just thought it's kind of like a clean slate. And we can start telling ourselves that, yes, I can do this. So I don't know. I just thought it was a great analogy because I relate to those kinds of things. So anyway, sorry.
That is, no, that's a great analogy. That's absolutely true, is we can reboot. And what we're saying is that how it's been going before does not have to be how it is going to be going forward. That it doesn't, we can reboot. That being said, we still need to have a way to do it. Say, okay, so now I unplug. So now what do I do? How am I going to not do the same thing I did before? And for that, we need the strategy. Otherwise, because we have what's called hergel, because we have the habit of doing something, when we have the habit, the 9 times out of 10, we will resort to doing what we were doing before unless we have a way to break out of it. So the breaking out of it is, hopefully this gives us a tool to follow up exactly on what you're saying, is like, when we reboot, now what are we going to do? How are we going to do it differently? Otherwise, we're going to go back to hergel. What's really beautiful about what you just said of rebooting and starting over is, and I like, it's not really meant to be like this, but rebooting, your boot goes on your foot, like on your regel. So the word for a habit is hergel, and it comes from the word regel, like a regel, like how you walk. The shalosh regalim, the 3 pilgrimage holidays, where you go pilgrims, like we're going by walking, but it means regular. So if you go to the pizza store in Israel, or like we just ordered some photos today, if you say regil, it means regular, like plain cheese, that's regil. So anything that you want, but regil, listen how it's spelled. Resh Gimel, the same first 2 letters as rega, the same first 2 letters of regesh, and this time it's the lamed. Regel is Resh Gimel lamed. So what we're trying to do is to break out of the regil, out of the regel, and out of the regesh, and transform it into rega, and to capture those 5 seconds, those 5 regas, so that we can have a chance against this opposing force that is going to loom up. Because just when we reboot, guess what else reboots? The Yetzer Hara will reboot also, because it has to be designed to be in counter force against us. It has to be an impediment that matches us. So we have to have a strategy. We have to have a strategy that's going to be successful, one moment at a time. And that's the other piece of the Yetzer Hara and making these changes is, again, that they happen just little bit by little. But we know that, if you launch a rocket ship and you're just off like a little tiny bit, by the time it gets too far, you're going to have like missed the planet. You're going to be off completely. So it says like all of these little moments change the trajectory that we're on. And each time there are opportunities to correct. Think about when we drive. We're usually hopefully not driving and we're not talking about turning corners, but if you're just driving down the road, even a straight road, we are constantly going like this with the steering wheel, right? We're constantly making minor adjustments. Well, what if we're like, well, I really feel like just going to the right? It's like, well, then you're gonna be off the road. At some point you will be off the road. So these minor adjustments are what our days are made of, are these little minor choices, these minor moments, these minor seconds, these minor regas, where we have a chance to be able to implement the changes that we'd like to have. Etta, did you have a question also? Yes, thank you.
Yes, I did. Well, a couple of things. One thing is a strategy I use all the time with the Yetzer Hara, of which I have a humongous one. And
it means you're a great person.
Oh, yeah, right. So the first thing I do with the Yetzer Hara is I agree with it completely. Absolutely. You're right. I'm not getting out of bed. I'll never get out of bed. I like to do exactly what you would like. At which point it seems to go away. And then I can do whatever I want. So every mitzvah that comes up, I just say, you're right, too much trouble. They're not grateful. Why should I bother? And then it lets me alone. So everybody's got a different Yetzer Hara. And to me, this has worked for me very, very well, because it seems to go to sleep if I agree with it.
That's so interesting. It's like you take away it's like an opponent. What is it? One of the martial arts where you don't stand against it. You use its force against you, and you like let it come, and then like it flips itself out. I would try that at home myself.
The other thing was that, in Israel, they're always saying rega, rega. And I never understood what they were talking about. I thought it meant have patience, lady. But no,
that's savlanu. But that same thing. Rega means a moment. Wait a minute. Rega. Moment.
It's so funny that it makes us all very angry whenever they say that to you. It's like saying calm down, and
nobody likes to be told to calm down.
No. So I want to thank you very much. That's all I have to say.
I love that so I think that it kind of goes along with with my picking up the rag when I say I'm not cleaning for like don't worry, Yetzer Hara, I'm not cleaning for it's like, oh, it's too hard. So I was like, you're right, I am not cleaning for pace. I'm just gonna pick up this rag. It's like what your children might do when they want to do something, like I'm not going in the pool, I'm just putting my feet in. And the next thing you know, they're like in the pool. It's like, you can't go in until whatever. It's like, I'm not going in. I'm just putting my foot in. I'm not going in. It's like, okay, but don't go in. I'm not. Well, I'm standing on the step, but I'm not going in. And the next thing they're in. So it's like this little kind of rega by rega also tells us how to defeat it. It's like, don't make a big show. The last thing we want to do is say, and I'm going to do this. It's like, that's asking for it's it's like the quarterback announcing what the strategy is in the game. It's like, we're going to go this way and then that way. It's like, great, thank you, just told me what my defensive position should be. So it's like, don't announce it, and keep it really, really little and low. And I like yours, Edges, like you can agree with it. It's like, yeah, that's you're right, I'm not going to do that. You're right, I'm staying in bed. And the other thing that's funny is that it becomes humorous, especially when you said, and I'm going to stay in bed forever. It's like, because then you think like, well, I'm certainly not going to do that. That's actually motivating to us. It's like, well, I'm not that pathetic. Like I am going to get up. It's almost like a reverse psychology on ourselves. It's like, I am going to get up. So yeah, all good things. And each person needs to know what works for them. It's really helpful to know how our brains work and our brain is different than our mind, and that we need to understand the different parts of it and how they function and what their goals are. So it's a very important function that our brain is wired to try to keep us at a status quo, because if we did every blessed thing, we had a little inkling of a thought that we wanted to do, it would probably be not very good for our survival. Be like when I was a kid, when I thought I would fly, jump off our roof and fly with a parachute made out of sheets from our neighbors. Like that was a bad idea. It's like, well, what if nothing in my brain said like that might not be such a good idea? Why don't you stay on the ground? So we need this voice. It's just not always the voice that we should be listening to, but it's very convincing. As Beth Ann said, it sounds like the truth. And there's lots of strategies for us to help. So hopefully this 5-second rule will help. We'll be able, as we think about this week's parsha of Mi-Tzion, when we get to this Zachor about Amalek, to remember this force and its other mention in Shemot and Exodus, and to know that that is equal to the 1,365 that equals those 5 magic seconds, the 5-second rule that we have to act. So God willing, we'll be successful in each of our moments of our regas, and find ourselves really, it's really courageous. And again, not something we'd write home about and say, you'll never believe it. I got out of bed. I didn't push the snooze. I did not push the snooze button. And I actually just got up and I just did what I said I wanted to do. So God willing, we can act with Zerizus, and we can fulfill the obligation in the Code of Jewish Law to be as mighty as a lion, to get up in the morning. And once we're up, amazing things can happen. Some people say the next thing you should do is make your bed. Get up and make your bed. And so your whole life will take a dramatic stage. I think there was somebody who spoke about this at a college graduation ceremony. He said, my advice to you is get up and make your bed. And then everything else will just fall into place. So God willing, it should go that smoothly, but it's a great start. All right, ladies, thank you so much for joining me and participating, and wishing you a wonderful Shabbos and success. And we'll look forward to meeting next week.
Yasher Koach, that was amazing.
Thank you. Wonderful, Ellyn. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. I'm going to share it this Shabbos. I'm going to teach for the first time for the women's Shabbos learning for here in Mi-Tzion Yericho. So
They are good
That's
for
lovely.
gonna
Did you?
do it.
That's wonderful. How many women are there?
It really depends, because the women come from throughout the yishuv. So sometimes there are like 10, sometimes there are 20, 30, depends. It's the last Shabbos, the last weekend before school starts on September 1st. So some people take this last weekend as an opportunity to go away, or because, otherwise it gets pretty hectic after that. So it could be anywhere from 5, I'd say probably from 5 to 15 people. Women. So I'm hosting it too. So usually it's hosted at somebody else's, at different women's homes each Shabbos. Sometimes they have somebody host and somebody give the share, but I said I would do both. So
Also in your place.
my
In
place, yeah, in my home.
So I think you chose a week that has a name that is funny. There's no more camps. And my friend, when I went in this time to Israel, could only see me if she brought all the grandkids, because the grandparents become the parents because the parents want to work. And it's a really hard 2 weeks, I think, for the grandparents.
Very
So
hard time. Yes.
Yeah, you might
because
not get people, I'm sorry, because many will be in duty.
that's what I'm
maybe.
saying, is people are going to be, people
Not
are,
babysitting, a lot of them. Yeah, I think it's 2 weeks or 3 that is a problem. I'm not sure. That
I
can't
don't
start.
know, but hopefully it's on Shabbos, so people aren't in camp. I mean, people are, parents
But-
aren't working on Shabbos for sure.
Right, that's true. But
So
they're in
people
charge.
are-
That's the problem.
What was that? They're in charge of their kids?
Oh,
They
you're
were-
right.
they are,
No,
every
they're-
Shabbos they're in charge of their kids.
You're right.
Yeah, because kids don't go to a away camp here. They have different like day camp things, but
I
we'll
cannot-
see. And then it also depends on the heat, because that makes a difference too. Whatever, I have chocolate brownies and watermelon for whoever comes.
The
And if they
heat
don't
meaning-
come, I might have to eat the brownies unless I count back 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, put it back in the freezer, which is I think what
freezer.
I'll do.
Yeah, freezer. The problem
What
is
are you
they're
going to
good-
talk about?
I'm going to give this class what we just talked
Oh,
about.
great.
Yeah.
Excellent. They're very, very lucky to have you.
Very fortunate.
Thank you.
When you say heat, it's hard to walk from their home to your home. Is that the challenge?
It's very hilly here. It's hilly and hot. And the women have strollers. And so they're pushing babies and it's hot. You know,
But they're
it's like
coming-
100.
Oh, they might come with the babies too.
Yeah.
The word will get out how amazing you are for those who attend. And the
Oh.
next time you give a class, don't worry.
And
This will
the
be our
Double
this will be
and
our
triple your
trial
brownie
run.
recipe. You'll be
That
amazed.
Watch
recipe
the
is good.
babies?
I made it with my granddaughter. So yeah. So looking forward to it. But thank you for sharing it with me. It makes me feel more confident to share it with you first. And then
Of course. It was
Mm.
fantastic. And the sorry for the question, the husbands cannot watch the kids, so the women can come and have a
they
really-
do, but they some of them have, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 children. So it gets sometimes they bring a baby with them that's nursing. So
Yeah, of course. The nursing, yes. That's a good excuse. Good luck. Let's how it went.
Hatzlacha.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yashin.
Toda rabba.
Good to see
Thank
you
you.
both.
Thank you so much, Ellen.
Shabbos,
Thank you.
everyone.
It's so great to see you all. And
Thank
Miriam,
you.
sister, your father, your husband, Zalman should have, his neshama should have a true aliyah, and all the changes and growth that comes through you and through each of us from our learning today should all accumulate for him and just send his aliyah, send his neshama to the highest levels.
Beautiful. Amen.
All right. Take good care, everybody, and have a good Shabbos.
Shabbat shalom.
Bye.
Warm
Thanks
regards.
again.
Thank you.
Live in the family, please. Warm
Thank
regards.
you.
Ellen?